In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern. There is plenty of thunderstorms happening around the nation, especially the central and eastern states. We have a major cool down on the way over the coming days that is going to bring very, very unseasonable temperatures to a lot of the central and eastern states. It should feel a lot more like late October, early November even for some areas, as opposed to the very early September timeframe. We do have plenty to discuss in the tropics as well, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Before we dive into things, be sure to check out Prestige Weather, which you can now find underneath this video, but you can still find it in the pinned comment, description, and top right corner of your screen. We have one more day that ends tonight at 12 a.m. As we move into September 1st, where you can do code direct for 99 cents for your first month. We have uploaded our official fall forecast in there, our September forecast, and there's many others upcoming. Also, we are doing a $50 giveaway for guessing when our next named storm is going to be. So if you go ahead and join today at only 99 cents, you could win $50. A couple of you are already putting in your guesses in there, so be sure to check it out. Let's dive into things and take a look here at the upcoming pattern. And like always, there is always plenty going on, but by this we'll move it towards the evening. We can see that there is plenty of thunderstorms happening around this frontal boundary here, becoming a little bit stationary. We've talked about this time and time again. It is going to flatten over these areas over the course of the day today into tomorrow. And this will bring a potential for flooding, if not very heavy rainfall and dreary weather for these areas. We also have another kind of cold front area set up underneath this strong low that is located over the Hudson Bay. So that is also occurring here. And outside of that, we do have a lot of Gulf influence. We have a lot of moisture. This is going to cause potential tropical downpours to these areas. Let's take this towards tomorrow on this will be Sunday, September 1st, and what we have here is a large ridge over the west and then a large trough over the east. So this colder air is moving in now for the eastern states starting tomorrow. As we've been forecasting for, I would argue, close to 2 weeks, this cool down is finally going to be occurring. Here's that stationary front that I was mentioning. So we see this really just setting up for these areas right here, and this will bring potential flooding. We do have couple areas of interest in the tropics off the southeast should be watched, south of Louisiana, but as of now the odds of development are rather low. We will dive into that a little bit later on. We do have a bigger threat across the central Atlantic that is going to be moving into the Caribbean, and that is going to be a focal point for really a lot of our tropical discussion today. So stay tuned for that, of course. Let's go ahead and move this forward. I want to take us towards Monday on September 2nd, and we still have this massive warm blob out west and then a trough, which is going a little bit inverted over the central states, as we've kind of mentioned. So some cooler air will be able to dive its way into these areas like Oklahoma, Texas, and surrounding states, but it is now reaching a lot of areas along the East Coast. Basically, if you are north of this precipitation, you are experiencing the cold. If you're south of that precipitation, you're not seeing it yet. So just keep that in mind. That precipitation must pass, and then that front will have passed over you, and you will experience that cold. We do, with that kind of in mind, have a couple areas of precipitation that are worth noting, and that's going to be mostly for that Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas area, and then for the southeast. Again, a lot of tropical moisture located offshore for the Gulf and Southeast. We will monitor this, of course. I think that the odds are rather low, at least over the next 5 to 7 days, let's call it. But there's always a chance, especially this time of year. And given the conditions that we have, this definitely is something that should constantly be monitored. For Tuesday on the 3rd, what we see is this ridge is getting a lot more inverted. This trough is doing the same thing, getting really inverted into Texas and Oklahoma. Again, cooler air is being allowed to move into all of these areas north of that precipitation. So now we're looking at some of the southeast and mid-Atlantic down through the south central states. These areas should be rapidly cooling by this point. And again, very, very unseasonable is what you should anticipate. We're talking 70s, 60s, even 50s for some areas as high temperatures, and then 50s and even 40s for some areas as lows. So rather cold, if not cool, during some of the highs. We do see some precipitation kind of just bottled up down here near the Gulf Coast, as it often is. So that is going to be something to track, as well as, again, the tropical areas of interest. Now, Wednesday here on the 4th, this is finally when we kind of get a warm push going back for the east. There's this kind of this lifting motion going on, and don't get it twisted. I mean, we still have a rather cool temperature pattern, especially along the east coast here, but it is warming slightly. We see a lot of this Gulf energy being pushed further northward here, but we do have another major cool down on the way. We see this low. It was located over the Hudson Bay here. It moves across eastern Canada, and it has a stretching cold front underneath, and that is the boundary where this cold is moving in from. So we see a much more significant cool down with this second one moving through. Here is Friday on the 6th, and we see everything kind of coming together. Massive ridge out west, large trough trying to move here into the east, so it is making its way in. And we have basically an Arctic low set up here over these areas in Canada. This is very, very cool temperatures, very wet, I would say. So it's going to be dreary, cloudy, and cool is what you can anticipate. Of course, it probably goes without saying our cold front is located right here. And we do have this kind of warm, humid, tropical push up the southeast coast here. This is bringing downpours, heavy, heavy rainfall, and it is quite humid and warm by this point, but that cold front is coming. So that is what we're seeing here. By this point, let's take this towards Saturday on September 7th. What we see here is a couple of areas of low pressure on the eastern side of this really strong Arctic air mass here that is now moving towards the Great Lakes. We have a large ridge out west, large trough extending for a lot of the east. Still hasn't reached these areas fully yet, but it is on the way. Strong storms can be anticipated for eastern Canada and into the northeast of the United States. Let's take this towards Sunday on September 8th. What we see here is this massive ridge is taking place out west. And then we have this cold air mass that's really located for a lot of the south central states here. That is kind of extending eastward here as well. That is the look that we have currently, with the coldest temperatures being located somewhere in here, I would say, is the area to watch for the coolest temperatures in there. Monday on September 9th, we see that one finally lifting off. So we have this kind of cold dip still left over for the east coast, but it's just like the last one where it is kind of beginning to lift off on that eastern end. We're seeing still reasonably close to normal temperatures, I would say, for the central states. Still cooler than normal along the east. Probably not what it was at the height of things, though, is definitely the look here. Let's take this towards, let's see, September 10th. We should get a little bit of an insight into September 10th, and we see kind of just furthering of what we've been seeing for September 9th, this lifting of that trough in the east. Still a massive ridge in the west, so the future beyond this point is still rather unknown. We do have some stormy weather across the Gulf and southeast still. Now the GFS model, let's take a look at what this says. We have this cool down. That first one lifts off, and then we get this second cool down. Dives a little bit further south on this run and actually lasts a little bit longer, as it's still here by the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. It finally lifts off, but then it looks like we get another one moving in for that kind of 14th, 15th, 16th time frame. Definitely a pretty substantial cold pattern here that we see on this model run. There's your tropical area of interest. This one really keeps it further south, hitting Mexico. So kind of what we saw yesterday on a lot of the models. There was a grouping that kept them much further south in the Gulf there, and we don't see a lot of development. If it stays weaker, it'll likely travel through this southern area. If it strengthens, we should see a recurvature towards the north at some point, whether that's for the East Coast or for the Gulf Coast. So that is kind of what we're watching for. Still, every option is on the table, as this is still kind of a long range thing that we're tracking. Let's go ahead and move on. I want to take us towards this European ensemble model. Here is those lows that we took a look at yesterday. Again, this model is pretty consistent with it moving into this Eastern Caribbean area. Moving south through this area, we should see a pretty consistent flow, but they're going to start to spread out pretty significantly in the longer range. Yeah, and this is when things get really, really interesting. A lot of them in this southern area, as you can see, is weaker lows. So definitely that is starting to look like the majority option. Definitely something that we're watching for. However, we do see quite a few here on this northern end, and these could get interesting. So this is by Saturday the 7th. Let's watch what happens. And we get a couple of these very strong systems moving towards this area. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida would need to be on high alert. We don't have any tracking towards the southeast, thankfully, so that is definitely something that we're going to be watching. But we don't really get much action in that area this time around. Now, here is kind of the entire spaghetti model plot of all of that we took a look at also yesterday, where we do see this very large grouping here to the south, which is a good news solution, as we talked about yesterday. You know, we want this to be a weaker system. If it's a weaker system, it will likely stay further south and be suppressed like this. We do still see a significant group that also takes this north towards the eastern Gulf Coast. That would be, again, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. And that would be a stronger storm solution indicated by a lot of the reds, pinks, purples. That's what we're watching for at this point. We do see that a couple develop this system out here in the middle of the Atlantic, but they do kind of track it northward there. So that is what we're watching for at this point, kind of tracking it north like this. Should stay out to see if it does develop, and then we don't get any development here south of the Gulf of Mexico. So keep that in mind. Let's take a look here at the European AI model. And what we see here is really mainly this system that we're watching still in the southern Caribbean into the southern Gulf of Mexico. We see it move through like this, just like what we saw in the GFS model and some of the European ensemble members. We don't really get much in the way of development until the 13th on this model. Take it with a grain of salt. That is very far out, but we do get a little bit of development off the southeast like I've been talking about, and we'll have to see what this does here. Let's see. It moves up the east coast and then eventually offshore, not intensifying too greatly this time around on this model run, which is good news at least, but this could bring some precipitation to the southeast if things looked exactly like this. Now, the GFS model's total precipitation, we do get quite a bit here for a lot of further south areas in the deep south, like the south central, into the southeast, and then even up into eastern Canada. This will bring our average precipitation kind of to the above average category for the deeper south central, deep south, southeast areas especially, but even creeping towards the Ohio Valley and mid-Atlantic, and then much drier across a lot of the north and west. Let's take a look here at the temperature pattern according to this GFS model. We do see this diving Arctic blast, and this is significant. The greens are 10 to 15 degrees below normal. That is going to be a significant departure from what's typical for all of these green areas. Again, healthy ridge out west. This oftentimes helps out a lot to bring this colder air further south and further eastward here, and that is exactly what we see happening here. That sticks around through about the 3rd, 4th, 5th, kind of sticks around for the east coast. We never see a full warm-up occur, but there is some warmer air in there for the east. Now, we do get the second cooldown, and this one's even more significant. Again, the greens are 10 to 15 degrees below normal, and these blues within the greens here, and kind of like the whites, is going to be 15 to 25 degrees below normal. So that is months ahead of schedule this cold. Definitely a very significant cooldown, and this one really sticks around on this GFS model. Here's the 13th, 14th, 15th. Here's that kind of third cooldown that is pretty exclusive for the Northeast and New England, as well as Eastern Canada. And then this is what we're kind of left with by the end of the model run. Still pretty significant warmth out west, but we don't have any more Arctic air masses making it through. So definitely something we're going to be tracking. Here is kind of the long range temperature forecast. This is the 1st through the 6th. Let's take this towards the 6th through the 11th, which is much cooler than this current period. Here's the 11th through the 16th, not quite as much. 13th through the 18th, not quite as much. And then we kind of get a warm up here. Our next cooldown on this long range model will be kind of like the 24th through 29th time frame here, where we see another cold pattern setting up in the east with a warm pattern out west. Then here is the 29th through the 4th. The coast stays cold, but there is some warmth heading towards the east. Although we do cool back down for this kind of 8th, 13th time frame of October, which is very, very far out. So again, take that with a grain of salt for sure. Let's take a look here at the entirety of the month of September, and this is the look on this CFS daily model. We see a cooler air mass for the east for the majority of the month, and then a warmer air mass out west for a majority of the month. That's the current setup according to this model. Let's take a look at the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook. We do have a whopping 0% chance here for this 1 year Africa. Our main area that we're watching keeps flip-flopping between 50 and 40%. It was 50% for a while yesterday. It's back down to 40% for today. and that's over the next 7 days. That gives us kind of a medium chance of development. Keep in mind that this is likely lowering again because of that southern solution that we're seeing from a lot of those models. Now, let's go ahead and take a look here at this Gulf area as well, where there's a 20% chance of development over the next 7 days and a 10% chance over the next 48 hours. So still watching for those homegrown systems. Again, I've talked about this time and time again. The National Hurricane Center is also still keeping their eyes on this. Anyway, guys, be sure to check out Prestige Weather. Again, you can find it underneath this video. You can also find it on the, well, you can't find it on the top right corner of your screen anymore, but you can find it in the description and pinned comment down below. So be sure to check that out. We also upload every single day, so be sure to subscribe for those. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.